Hi everybody, this is Carol Sherwood. Welcome to Stephen Avery, The Devil is in the Details. This is the second part of the episode 5 of Fibs and Fobs. So yesterday we did the key and Andy Colburn's role in lying about the cabinet. So the infamous key story we covered yesterday. On this part of the Fobs, we're going to look at the key specifically as it is a key, a manufactured key by Toyota, and what that means as it relates to a RAV4 and what it means as it relates to Teresa Halbach. So, part 2 of Fibs and Fobs. This is Fobs. All right, y'all, I had to put my granny specs on because I got to be able to read something to you. So, I want to start this off by referring to a report, and I'm going to hold this up there and see if you guys can see it for the moment. It is dated 11/16 of 05. So remember, Teresa goes missing 10/31/05. She's reported missing 11/3 of 05. They find the car on 11/5 of 05 on Saturday, and then they find the key and some other things on 11/8 of 05. So this report is 8 days later on 11/16 of 05. And I just want to read this to you because it's kind of important for you to hear this. This is by investigator John Dedering, the fixer. And it's dated 11/16/05, and the type of activity says contact with Toyota Customer Service Center. On Wednesday, 11/16/05, Dedering did make contact with Toyota Customer Service Center, and he gives the 800 number. I want you to listen to this real closely. I spoke with a representative named Don and asked him if he could tell me how many vehicles would have to be built by Toyota Motor Corporation before the ignition and door locks would be replicated, or in other words, used again. I want you to just stop right there. Listen as I read this sentence. I asked him if he could tell me how many vehicles would have to be built by Toyota Motor Corporation before the ignition and door locks would be replicated, or in other words, used again. Let's just talk about that for a minute. You found the key. You found the car. You've already told the entire world through your press conferences and everything else, we found the key that goes with the car that belongs to Teresa on the Avery salvage yard. But yet, a week after you find this key, you're asking Toyota how many Toyotas would have to be built. It sounds like the start to an Aggie joke. How many Aggies would it take? But it's not. How many Toyotas would have to be built before the locks and the cylinder would be replicated? I want you to think about what that means. Do you know what I think? They're asking, could this possibly match up to another vehicle? Why else? You think about it. Why do you think he would want to know how many cars have to be created before this is replicated? The key, the locks, the cylinder, the lock cylinder. You already found the key. You've already got the key. And on 11/16, you've already got the replicated key. And the reason why is because the car was taken, we already have reports on this. The car was taken to the lab on 11/6 on Sunday because Ron Groffey, one of the lab rats, said his boss called him and asked specifically that he come in and help process the vehicle. They needed some photographs taken. And you can read his report where he says they told him what photographs and stuff to take. And he also states in his report that when he got there, the driver's side door was unlocked. So on the 6th, the driver's side door was unlocked. Could it have been unlocked by a police jimmy? Sure it could. The importance is the door's unlocked. On the 11th, there's another report that shows one of the officers retrieved the copy key. So they already have the car on the 5th, the key on the 8th, the copy key at least by the 11th, and on 16th, Dedering's asking how many Toyotas would have to be replicated in the locking mechanism, the ignition and door locks, before it would be repeated, used again. You guys may not think that some of these reports mean much, and I don't think that they expected a whole lot of these reports to ever come back and be even looked at. There is definitely information there that needs to be looked at. In this same report, he states in there that he had gotten hold of a woman named Donna Connick, and he says she's a contact person for Toyota, but she's not. She represents NICB, the National Insurance Crime Bureau. She has nothing to do with Toyota except for the fact that she does deal with questions regarding automobiles and Toyotas, but she works for the National Insurance Crime Bureau. So don't be misled by the fact and thinking she's a Toyota expert, because she's not with Toyota. He provided the VIN number for Teresa's 99 Toyota RAV4, and Ms. Connick gave him the key code for Teresa's VIN number's key code, which is 14070. All right. Now, when you're asking for a key code, your purpose of wanting the key code is for replication. We get that, okay? And you need to know that too. So keys have a key code. What I found out is key codes, depending on what they are, they tell the cut of the key. In this case, it's not a chip code. There's a huge difference. This is not a chip code. It's a key code, which tells them what to set that little key cutting machine on to make the grooves the areas that it's supposed to make them in the right pattern that it's supposed to make them, according to code 14070. Go look on Google and look up key codes 14070, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The other thing that's important is she stated Toyota used this particular lock cylinder every 5,000 builds. So it could be replicated in every 5,000 builds. Not just RAVs. She says not just RAVs. So you still have to wonder, why do you want to know how often the lock and ignition key is replicated? How often? Who cares? Who cares? We're talking about Teresa Hallbach's RAV, ending in 3044 VIN, and we're talking about Teresa Hallbach's Toyota RAV4 key, the valet key, that's been found on Stephen Avery's bedroom floor. We're not talking about any other RAV4 in the whole world. We're talking about one. And you're doing an investigation on this woman having disappeared and most likely at this point she's been murdered, and we're only talking about her car that you already found on the property with blood in it, with DNA on it, and you found the key in his bedroom. That shocker, everybody knows now that's the key that goes with that car. Or is it? That's pretty interesting, though. You need to know that. So that's one thing I want to take you to, because that happened in 05. Let's keep on rolling down the calendar to 2017. 05 to 17. 12 years later, Dedering's back on the scene. Remember, they brought him out of retirement to do follow-up interviews. And guess what he asked about? The key. He asked about the damage too, but we'll talk about that later. He asked about the key. Who on earth cares about that key or even this car 12 years later? The case is done. Slam dunk, DNA, put him away. But he's asking about the key. Let's take a look at those. I want to talk to you a little bit now about those 2017 follow-up interviews that John Dedering, the fixer, followed up on. All right? So let me tell you something. It's real interesting because in 2017, they brought John Dedering, as you know, out of retirement to conduct these follow-up interviews. I guess there's not one person that's qualified to take a list of questions and go ask those people that they talked to in 2005. Maybe it's because John Dedering was there back then, but they brought him out of retirement. So those of you in Wisconsin need to know your hard-earned tax dollars paid to bring a guy out of retirement, probably at consultant fees, to go follow up on interviews. And guess what he asked? Now, there's a few other questions, primarily two questions. He asked about the damage to Teresa's vehicle, which we'll cover in another episode, and the key. So 12 years later, in 2017, he's asking about the key, specifically asking, did any of her friends or family or associates ever notice whether or not Teresa had a key fob, meaning a keyless entry, not a remote start your car, but just the fob that you click on the little button that unlocks your car before you get to it. Because remember, what they found is a valet key. It's not the extra key. It's not the original key. It's a valet key. There are some vehicles that in the past were only issued 2 keys. So it's debatable whether or not she had an original plus an extra plus the valet. That's what I have on cars, but on older cars. But it could very well have been she had her original key and a valet key. Either way it goes, we do know that what they found is the valet key. So when they called back in 2005 and got the key code, it's the code for the cut. And I did verify that with a locksmith that's also a Toyota expert. So anyway, so that little key code that he called and got 8 days after they found the key is interesting, because I want to read you something from the Locksmith Expert, Toyota. The 1999 RAV4 takes a standard key, meaning there is no programming necessary. It is not a transponder key. You should be able to go to any Toyota dealership with your driver's license and vehicle registration, and they should be able to make you a key from the VIN. You can pick up aftermarket remotes for this vehicle by following this link, and then he gives me a link. But when that car was made in 1999, and here's why he says this. He says, master keys and subkeys, meaning that extra key, are used on the newer vehicles but do not pertain to a 1999, as the computer of the vehicle is not set up to read a key as it would be with a transponder, aka computer chip key. So a 1999 RAV4 did not come with a key that has a computer chip in it. It was not remote unlock possible. So let me tell you something. You need to know that, because in these interviews, he's asking, is anybody know if Teresa lost her fob? Because he hasn't confirmed that 99 didn't come with a fob. It didn't come with auto remote unlock. It did not come with that. It has no chip. That's why he's making those calls, and he's trying to make sure that no one remembers a fob. Well, guess what? They're not going to, because they didn't. Even Kelly Pitson, her BFF, that said when they went on their road trip that summer that she had the opportunity to drive Teresa's car and she had to manually use the key to unlock the car. She didn't say that she used the valet key. She just said she had to manually unlock the car. So there's part of that key, knowing she never had a fob. So all this nervousness about having a remote unlock is completely unnecessary, but it's interesting that there's such a focus on it in 2017. You know why? Because Kathleen Zellner has taken over Steve's case, and she's filing a motion, and she's asking for that key, and she's asking for that car, and they know she's smart enough to find out, if they give her that key, can she find out if that's the real key that goes to Teresa Halbach's real RAV? And because you know that I do not believe that the RAV4 that was found on Stephen's property belongs to Teresa, they've got to be sure before they give her that key, not because of the DNA. It's been wiped clean and Stephen's DNA has been put on that key. It's because they have to be sure if she starts snooping, which at that point, there's really not necessarily a reason to, with the exception of, remember, the color issue has been kind of a continuous, disagreement over the years. But other than that, the talk about there being two RAVs outside of the color really wasn't much when Kathleen Zellner came on board. But they have to make sure that she doesn't or can't trace back that key to some other vehicle. That's why they want to know how many times the ignition and the lock cylinder is replicated, to find out if there's any chance she might find out that could go back to another car. So that's that. But I also want you to know that Dedering, in his follow-up interviews, contacted Angie Colosso. Now, Colosso has a dealership, a Toyota dealership in Wisconsin. What's interesting is you don't find them calling Lemieux, where Teresa bought the vehicle. And remember, they never asked for her purchase agreement of this car, because there's information in the purchase agreement we'll go over later, but they'd have to turn that over to the defense. So they don't even go to Lemieux. And it could be that Lemieux may have told them, leave us out of all of this. But he goes to Angie Colosso at Colosso Toyota. And what he says is, I spoke with Angie Colosso, who is the body manager at Colosso Toyota. This is in September of 2017. I provided Angie with the VIN for Teresa's RAV4, and after a few seconds, Angie indicated that the RAV4 did, in fact, come with a keyless entry. Angie emailed me a copy of the build sheet, which a copy can be found with this report. Okay, so here's the report. And then when you go look at the build sheet, which we've got a better copy of it, and you look at the build sheet, there is nothing in this build sheet that talks about keyless entry. What it does say is that the car had power locks and power windows. That is not the same thing as keyless remote entry. So I challenge Angie Colosso and her information to be inaccurate, because the build sheet does not state remote. The Locksmith Toyota expert has already indicated the computer in a 1999 Toyota did not have the capability of reading a chip. The key had no chip. So all of this investigation regarding this key is to find out and to give themselves assurance that Kathleen Zellner cannot find out and trace that key back to another RAV. You know, as well as I do, they've never given her the RAV. We truly don't know if that key fits that RAV. We just know they found a Toyota key in Stephen's bedroom, and that Dedering called and got the key cut code after they already had a key to unlock the car. They've already got a copy key, so someone had already gotten that key code. My guess it was the locksmith that unlocked the car. But nobody can remember that. But Dedering dated a report for 11/16 of 05 where he calls to get the key code like they need it. So just one more ounce of information to let you know that that key and all those questions about the key fob that nobody remembered a fob. Of course they didn't remember a key fob. There was never a key fob. But what's interesting is, and I want you to think about this, wherever Teresa's keys wound up, they didn't have the key to Teresa's car. Think about that. I don't think that's Teresa's car, and I don't think that's Teresa's key. Because if they had Teresa's car and they had Teresa's keys, whatever other keys that she carried, whether there was one in the glove compartment, one hidden at her house, or one found on a keychain, they would not need one iota of information about that key.